enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Hello, this is The Thing About Cars. Welcome everybody. Around the table, we've got a pretty full crew today. Dawn, are you with us?
I'm awake.
You're awake?
Close enough, right?
Yes.
That was Ben. I heard Ben. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm awake and alive as well. Dave?
Well lubricated with mimosas. Dawn, that was per Dawn's instructions this morning.
We need to come up with an official Thing About Cars drink. We need to figure that out. But our special guest for the day is Dan Grech. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm on my third coffee of the morning already.
Third? Oh my goodness. Dan is the author of The Road Chose Me, both volumes. Isn't that right, Dan?
That's correct, yep.
I can't wait to talk about those and the journeys that you've had and the experiences that you've had driving all around the world. But before we get into that, how about a moment of Grand Trivia Auto?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so I think this will be a no-brainer for most of you. The question is very simply, who invented the modern three-point seatbelt in the late 1950s and immediately made the patent open and free to all car manufacturers? Was that company Volvo, Mercedes, Ford, or Tata? Tata out of India, of course. So shall I read that again? You guys good?
Just the four companies.
Okay. So who invented the three-point seatbelt? The companies, the choices are Tata, Ford, Mercedes, or Volvo. Okay, we'll answer that at the end of the episode. For now, let us shift gears and go over to Ben, who has a segment called That New Car Smell. Take it away, Ben.
Yeah, well, of course, I can't afford most new cars, and today's is no exception because I'm going to be talking about my beloved Lotus. Well, not my Lotus because it's an old beat up one, but the new ones. Well, of course, right now they're only selling one car in the United States. That's the Evora, which starts somewhere around 80,000 and goes, way north of there.
Goodness.
But this past week they changed CEOs. Martin Popham has stepped down, and I forget the new guy's name. But this comes right on the heel of them announcing that this summer they will be unveiling a new car that will replace both of the existing product lines, the Evora and the Elise/Exige, which haven't been sold in the U.S. since 2009. Or 12, I forget which year, but both of these platforms are going away. The Elise and Exige have been around since the mid-90s. The Evora has been around since 2009. And so they're both going to be replaced by this new line, which is going to be, more toward the higher end of the difference between the prices on the two existing ones. Nothing's been shown. We don't really know anything about it yet, but this also comes not long after they announced that whatever the next car is going to be the last one they make that will be powered exclusively by internal combustion. So lots of things happening at Lotus kind of all at once right now, and the cool thing about it is that it's much more believable than all the cool things that were happening there, say 8 years ago or so, when they had a CEO named Danny Bahar, who was an ex-Ferrari marketing executive who had huge ambitious plans. He was going to bring out 5 new models within like 2 years or something. Prototypes were shown. They're very swoopy and exciting, but the talk, kind of amongst the fans was, yeah, but can this really happen, And of course it didn't. He wound up leaving in shame, and even the prototypes that were shown off are whereabouts unknown right now. Yeah, they were non-running, of course. They were just mock-ups that were, on display at the car shows. But yeah,
man, that's disappointing. I was going to be like, man, this prototype sucks so badly they just got rid of him and the prototypes.
Yeah, there was going to be something that would probably wind up being a new Esprit. There was going to be something that would be called an Elan. There was going to be a replacement for the Elise. I forget what number 4 was. And then there was going to be a 4-door luxury car called the Etern. And, for those who see a pattern here, yes, Lotus does begin all their model names with the letter E for reasons I never quite figured out, despite being a huge fan.
Right.
But yeah, so the entire Lotus company basically is under a haze of new car smell right now. They've also been hiring hundreds of engineers at the plant. They've expanded the plant, huge influx of cash from their owners, the Geely Group out of China. They're supposedly going to be incorporating a little bit of stuff from Volvo, which is another Geely holding. So yeah, the boys from Norfolk are going to be hitting us with a whole lot of new car smell.
but only under a one car wrapper portfolio, right? I mean, they're getting rid of everything else they're producing, and we're going to have only one new car under the Lotus umbrella come out. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what the overlap is going to be. The new one will be shown this summer. I think I heard June was the date they're going to unveil it. Now, when it reaches production, it may be as a 22 model. I'm not really clear on that, and it'll probably come in before the other two are completely killed. There's got to be some overlap there, I would think.
Yeah, you don't just completely, yeah, that's right. There has to be some overlap.
Right. I don't know what the timing is going to be of when the existing lines, turn their last, roll on the assembly line. So
is this that hypercar that we've heard about, Ben? And
no.
Oh, okay.
No, that's the Avaya. That's the one that's I think the UK price translates into about $2 million. They're making 130 of them, and I think they've probably all been spoken for already. And it's all electric and supposed to be capable of something like 8 million miles per hour. I have seen some live video of a young British noble fellow, the 24-year-old Duke of something or other, strapped into the passenger seat of one on a test track, and his reactions are great. He basically like, holy, but in a British way.
It sounds like what exactly he says? Oh my.
Something like that. Yeah, but the performance of this thing is just unreal. But it is the guiding light that they're using for the things that are coming.
Yeah.
I've heard that the styling of it is going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? The sort of the design language dictator for what's coming for more regular production.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, it should be very interesting.
I think Dawn should get a Lotus.
Yeah,
I do too. I think so.
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed I didn't know all Lotuses started with E. I'm picturing Dawn behind the wheel of a Lotus Eleanor.
Well, all of them.
Eleanor. I would like it to be Eeyore.
All of them since the late 50s, at least. I mean, there were the early ones were like the Mark I and the Mark II. Then there was a 6. Then the 7 came out, and then the Elite came out, which was the first one that wasn't a number. And that's from there on, it's all been letter E stuff.
Dan, I know we're gonna talk to Dan momentarily about his preferences and the stuff that he does, but do you have a car preference in your daily driving activities?
It depends entirely on where I'm going. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of fun to daydream about, a sports car like a Lotus or a Porsche, but right now there's kind of 3 feet of snow on the ground. Yeah. So not so appropriate for, current situations. It's funny, like a rust bucket Subaru is actually like the dream car around here in the mountains of Canada.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's why you need a big garage. You just have the car du jour.
Yes, that would be.
That's my dream. My dream is many cars, multiple reasons.
I'd probably find myself a beat up snowmobile and transplant a Suzuki Hayabusa engine into it.
No, man, that's interesting.
Yeah,
there's definitely guys around here that have like twin turbo 2-stroke snowmobiles.
Oh yeah,
and so they are weapons. They accelerate way faster than a car can because they have the long track tread, so they get way more grip on the snow.
Right,
so they're insane.
That is crazy. Absolutely insane. That's absolutely crazy. I spent a little bit of time on a snowmobile once in my entire life. It was totally fun, completely just amazing fun. But I was always aware of how dangerous it could be if I do something stupid in it. That was just painfully clear. But yeah, snowmobiles, gotta get back in there and do that again. So thank you, Ben. Anything else about the Lotus that we wanted to touch on real quick?
No, that's about it, really.
And you have a Yellotus update, right?
Well, I did last week, but if I wanted to make one this week, I guess I would say I drove it around a little bit yesterday, and I hope I'm not premature or jinxing this, but I think I may have finally solved the problem with keeping the oil inside the engine.
Dun, dun, dun. Right.
Oh, nice.
What an innovative concept.
Right. Yeah. But then you won't know if there's any oil in there. That's a problem.
Well, that's the thing they say about old radial engine aircraft is that if it's not dripping oil, it doesn't have any.
Thank you, Ben. We will definitely check up on that again next week. Let's spend some time here talking to Dan. Dan has got an interesting resume that involves you getting into a car, or not a car, a truck, and driving the Pan American Highway. And you've done quite a bit of driving throughout Africa as well. And what am I forgetting here? You've been all over the world.
Not yet, Mickey. I'm working on getting all over the world. But yeah, you've summed it up pretty well. From the top of Alaska to the bottom of Argentina was my first big expedition. And then after that, I drove all of the way around Africa, so right around the coastline.
Just amazing. Just amazing.
That's fabulous.
I have many questions, but I want to let the gang chime in with their questions as well. My first question for you, and I'll just start it off with this, is why?
And the easy answer is why not? I was working as an engineer. I was kind of in my mid-20s, and I saw the people around me in the office who were in their 60s. And I realized, that could be me. My life just goes on to autopilot. Money comes into my bank account every 2 weeks, but like nothing kind of extraordinary happens. And I was sitting inside every day at my desk, but the mountains and the beautiful scenery was all outside. And so I just made a decision and said, I want to be out there. I want to go and do stuff. And so I started researching and planning, and I'd always wanted to see Alaska. I've just dreamed of it since I read Call of the Wild and all those great books. And so I decided, I threw some camping gear in the back of my Jeep and I drove up to Alaska for a summer. And it's beautiful, so many glaciers and mountains and moose and bears and everything you've ever dreamed of and more. And then I was loving life on the road so much, I said, I want to continue this. I want to keep having new adventures and kind of take it to the next level where I have to learn a new language and I have to deal with crossing international borders and kind of like step it up and keep all of these new experiences coming.
Amazing.
Nice.
Just amazing. Yeah. You guys.
I'll tell you, ever since Mickey said, let us know you were going to be on the show, I have been seriously cyber stalking you, and I've developed quite a schoolgirl crush.
That's good to know.
It's funny, and especially when I too started my career as an engineer, and on your website where you get to the section on the build of the Jeep that you took to Africa, this is like serious engineering porn.
Yeah. I'm looking at your Jeep Wrangler and I'm like, wow.
While I was sitting at my desk, David, working in inverted commas as an engineer, I may have spent a good deal of time researching and planning that build.
Nice.
Right.
So you didn't use any of, there is a Jeep that does that, right? That has that extended roof?
Never from the factory have Jeep offered any kind of like pop-up roof or kind of camping accessory.
Okay.
But being a Wrangler, part of the reason I chose it is because the aftermarket is just absolutely enormous. The number of options you can get for fridges and bumpers and winches. And that pop-up roof is purpose-made for my exact model of Wrangler. So it really is like a bolt-on. It took half an hour to put that on there. And suddenly the Jeep transformed from like just sort of a regular Jeep into suddenly it's like, wow, this is actually a house. Like,
yeah,
I can stand up and walk around in there. I sleep 6 feet off the ground. It's a huge, comfortable bed.
Well, you better in Africa because the lions may start coming in, and then the giraffes were like, hello.
I was thinking about snakes and other vermin getting into your tent. That way, if you're off the ground, you don't have to worry about that.
And all of those things happened to me in Africa. I legitimately did like hear lions roaring while I was upstairs. I woke up one morning and unzipped the tent and came face to face with a giraffe who was, maybe like 40 feet away.
That is
cool. Yeah. It was amazing. He just stared at me and I stared at him. It was great.
It reminds me of
so cool.
Reminds me of my brother. He did not anything near as gnarly, but he went down to Australia for a couple of weeks and he rented a little camper van and drove it along the East Coast. And there was some place he was parked, some little RV park, which he had to himself because it was the off season. And he wakes up one night to see a kangaroo just kind of looking in the windows at him, stuff like that, Yeah, but that brings me to, actually doesn't bring me to, but one question I have is my background is motorcycling, so I know a lot of people who've done similar expeditions on two wheels. And the one thing that a lot of motorcycle people run into when they go from North America to South America is almost all of them choose to ship their bikes around the Darien Gap for several reasons. Did you go through it, and what was your approach?
No, I definitely did not go through it.
Okay.
So the Darien Gap, for anyone that doesn't know, from Panama to Colombia, so from Central America to South America, there's actually no road. There never has been. There's just a big jungle. It's about 100 miles long and kind of swamps, and it's nasty for that reason, but it's also really dangerous. There's a lot of rebels in the area and kidnappings and stuff like that. And so it has been driven like once or twice by people who had military support. But the first people who did it, it took them about 700 days to drive 100 miles. So that gives you an idea of what it's like. So it was never something I was going to tackle. So what all of us do who drive the highway is we put our vehicles inside shipping containers in Panama and we ocean freight them down to Colombia, which is only a really short little hop. And it costs about $1,000 and about a week of paperwork.
There was a guy, I think he was German, but don't quote me on that. And I can't think of his name or the name of his book, but he tried to do it on his motorcycle, and he did in fact get kidnapped and escaped eventually somehow. The guy was some sort of badass, but I think he regrets trying.
So yeah, I think everybody who's tried it, they run into some serious problems. And because of the way that it's a big swamp, it kind of is just a question of like, for how long will your vehicle be floating?
Yeah.
Like at some point, you're going to put your vehicle on some sort of barge / homemade contraption. And are you going to float it for a few hundred yards, or are you going to float it for, a handful of miles? It's kind of just a question of that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Just amazing. So Dan, when you made the first trip, what were your considerations? What vehicle did you choose? Have you been using a Jeep throughout the entire process? Can you walk us through the actual logistical choices you had to make?
It kind of came around by accident, in all honesty. I'd always wanted a Wrangler, soft top, no doors, no roof. Growing up, it's like, I want to drive on the beach like that. And so I was living just in a city in Canada working as an engineer. And so I bought one and, I'd go out and have adventures in the mountains and go camping on the weekends. And kind of as the idea for the trip started to grow in my mind, I thought, well, this little Jeep that I have is already perfect. It's a capable little 4-wheel drive. It was only a 4-cylinder, 2.5 liter. So it was really simple, it's easy to work on. And so all of those things kind of lined up and I was like, why don't I just take this? I can't think of a better vehicle right now, and I bought it used. So it only cost $5,000. So it was, for the amount of kind of capability and adventure that it enabled, it was really cheap and like perfect for the trip.
Amazing. Yeah. And it all just came together.
Yeah. And as much as, I would want to add a winch or add, a fridge and all these kinds of accessories, I was on a really tight budget, like I don't work for National Geographic. I didn't have any sponsors or anything like that. I was just spending my own money. So I said, do I really need a winch? Or do I just need to use my brain and be careful not to drive into anything too crazy, And so I didn't get a winch. I didn't put a big suspension lift kit on it. I didn't add anything really. I just hit the road and wanted to have adventures and meet new people, see amazing places was really the goal.
It's just amazing. Because that was going to be my next question. How did you handle the financial side of doing the whole shebang? I mean, there must have been, not to mention food and lodging and stuff like that, but how did you handle those elements and how did you fund the whole thing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I really did. I just saved money for years and years while I was going to work. So just kind of the standard stuff, no eating out, no buying coffee. I walked to work every day, even in the winter, just trying hard to put aside money. And then eventually I got to a point where I said, I think this is enough. I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to go and live on that savings account and try to make it stretch as long as I possibly can.
Were you writing the book or just taking journaling the whole time you were on the road?
Back then, actually, I blogged the entire time. So I've got a website and I posted photos and stories from the whole trip. But that was long before Instagram or YouTube. Yeah. And that was before I even dreamed of writing a book. I just was having fun because I wanted to.
Oh, so awesome.
Nice.
So jealous and just I think I'm going to develop the crush that Dave's got here. It's just an amazing. I admire your fortitude and your planning and the sheer guts that it takes just to make the decision to do that kind of thing. I'm so completely jealous. But
Dan, how long did you wait between getting back from the Pan America trip and heading off to Africa?
It's a really good question, Dave. And to be honest with you, when I got back, I was out of money. So, I went back to an engineering job. And I would say I was sitting at that desk for about 3 hours before I said to myself, like, this is nuts. I have to do this. I have to go again. Like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I started saving money, like, week 1. But it took 5 years to save enough money to be able to then go to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was more of a question of how long or how quickly can I save money more than anything else.
I really like your website. I like how clean it is and it kind of gives everything over to it. This is really great. But I'm noticing that you've got Amazon and like sort of advertisements through. So who's your sponsors now?
Sponsors is a tricky word. I have some partners that I work with now in the industry, like Yokohama Tire, for example. We're working together. And Amazon, the way that works is you get affiliate links. Yeah. So if someone clicks a link and buys something, I get a small percentage of that sale.
Nice.
Yep. And then those are my books that you're probably seeing links to that actually I wrote those and, now they're for sale on Amazon.
Oh, yeah. Who's your publisher?
Amazon, actually.
Okay. You self-published then.
That's right. I self-published on Amazon.
Yeah.
That's
I can't
brilliant.
wait to read them.
Amazon makes it so easy. One of my books is through Amazon, and it's just not worth dealing with literary agents for something like this. It's so much more literary freedom. I am curious now, where and when next?
I do have a lot of big dreams and big plans. When I look at a world map, there's still a lot of blank spots that I've never been to. But obviously coronavirus has ruined all of my plans because international borders all over the world are closed. Yeah. So it's really hard right now to sort of pin down or to be able to confirm anything, because even when it looks like something's going to come together, suddenly the rules change. Yeah. Actually, Canada just announced that it's going to be really hard to even leave Canada, let alone come back to Canada. So I don't even know actually if I'm going to be able to leave anytime soon. Goodness. Yeah, so it's difficult, but it's safe to say in the next 20 or 30 years, I would like to go everywhere that I've never been.
Well, the upside of this current moment, though, is more time to save up for more time out there.
That's exactly right. And more time to daydream, and like read other people's blogs and watch YouTube videos and keep like circling things on maps and doing a little bit of research.
Yeah. Are you able to get out around Canada at all?
We can a little bit. Over the summer, I actually drove up into the Arctic Circle and kind of explored all around the north, touched the border of Alaska a couple of times, but I couldn't cross into Alaska. But now, again, we're on fairly tight restrictions here. We're not really supposed to go exploring. Gotcha. And because it's the winter time, I don't really want to be out camping anyway. So I'm staying pretty close to home.
Amazing.
Great.
My last question is, how long did each of these trips take? How many days, months, weeks was it that you spent doing the Pan American trip or the African trip?
When I set out for the Pan American, Mickey, I thought that it would take about a year, and it actually took 2 years.
Whoa.
And that was just because I was enjoying myself so much. There's so many beautiful places and things to see, and it's really cheap when you get down there. A meal bigger than I can eat is $1. In some countries, gas was like 33 cents a gallon. So, I could extend the trip out to 2 years. And then for Africa, I always knew that it would be big. And it actually ended up taking 3 years to drive all the way around Africa.
Amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it was a huge undertaking. Like it's a massive piece of my life. I kind of say it wasn't a vacation. Like that was my life. That's what I was doing for 3 whole years.
Wow.
Yeah.
My partner and I have made a point of taking a trip of a lifetime every year to every 18 months. And actually when we travel, I blog about it, but I've adopted an alter ego, very stuffy English noble, Lord Dunstan Tweed Kipper. I've cast my partner as his faithful manservant Cheeto. With the amount of time alone while you were doing this, are you naturally more introverted that the alone time was great, or did you have anything that was a great social connection that made you feel more connected or more in touch with the world?
A really good question, and there's definitely ups and downs along the way. I did really enjoy the solitude most of the time, but certainly in South America, it sort of became too much to bear. I actually thought about giving up because I was so lonely and I felt so disconnected from people. So I stopped for 5 months and I managed a hostel in Ecuador. So hostel is an amazing place if you want to get a case of wanderlust, because everyone's coming in from all over the world with stories about where they've been. And so for 5 months, I just stayed still and recharged my batteries and, got to chat to people every single day. So that really helped. And then in Africa, there are a lot of people actually driving around, especially in Southern and Eastern Africa. Before coronavirus, there are thousands of Europeans who just spend years and years driving around all of those countries, visiting all the game parks, and they've got these really cool tricked out Land Rovers and Land Cruisers. And so I bumped into a lot of other people living a similar kind of life. And it was great. We would convoy together, sometimes for months at a time, camping together every single night, having adventures. And then it was great because you have 2 vehicles, so you're a bit more willing to sort of go more remote and push your luck.
Yes.
And especially in West Africa, I drove with a German couple and we drove a really remote route in the Congo. And we crossed the border from Nigeria into Cameroon. And the border guards, when they finally sort of figured out what was going on, he was really shocked. And he said to us, he'd been working there for 3 years and he'd never seen a foreigner in his whole life.
Wow.
So even today, like that, that was in 2018, you can go to parts of Africa where they still legitimately have never seen an outsider. And you can drive there in your own vehicle. It's incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Dan, this is great. We could spend all day talking about this. I lied when I said I had no more questions, but I have one last question, which is, what advice would you have for people who might have wanderlust but don't think they have the wherewithal to make these trips? Like for someone like me and my wife, for instance, if we wanted to just get up and go, what general advice would you have for just and every couple like us that may think that the trip is not feasible at all?
Well, I think, Mickey, the important thing to remember is like it was really overwhelming for me as well. And it wasn't feasible for me either. Like I was just a beginner way back in the day. And so I just did small weekend trips, I just load up my camping gear on a Friday night and head out of town an hour or two. And I'd sort of practice and learn like, what do I love doing and what is my passion to get me out in the wilderness? For some people, it might be fishing. For some people, it might be reading a book under a tree. Whatever it is that motivates you and makes you passionate to get out, do more of it and practice and learn. And after you've done it for, a long time, you might say to yourself, oh, I really enjoy cooking and eating good food when I'm on the road. So maybe I should get a fridge and, maybe that's useful for me. Whereas other people will say, I just eat canned beans and couldn't care less. And so they never need to get a fridge. So it's kind of about finding like what works for you and just slowly work up. You don't have to jump in the deep end right away.
Yeah.
And just like any other thing you can do in today's world, there are online communities where you can talk with folks and pick their brains. And I know one of the biggest ones is Horizons Unlimited.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a forum of motorbike people who legitimately are riding motorbikes around the world.
Oh, yeah.
And even my eyeballs pop out of my head when I read stories about people who've ridden across Nepal or Mongolia or like parts of the world that I didn't even know are possible. Right. And they're like, absolutely, you can do it. Yeah, totally.
I've met Ted Simon once and, read a couple of his books and just really amazing tales.
Yeah, I quote him as my inspiration in my book.
Yeah.
And actually, so Ted Simon, a bit of background, he rode a motorbike around the world in 1967. And
mid-70s.
Was it?
Yeah, and 74 through 77, I think. And he did it again in the 2000s.
He did when he was 70 years old. He did it again. And so he's just this ordinary British guy, super likable, but just, doesn't work for National Geographic. He isn't rich. He just wanted to live his dream. And I finally met him as well and shook his hand and said, Ted, you changed my life. You're my inspiration. And he looked at me and said, well, Dan, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, that sounds like him. I spilled beer on him at a BMW motorcycle rally once. And he gave me that look,
He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he is.
All right, Dan, 4 questions. You ready?
Ready.
Number 1, what is your dream car?
Mickey, I used to dream, like I said, about Porsche. I think Dad was a car guy and he got me hooked. But these days, I dream about a car and enough money to take it somewhere fun.
Yeah.
And the car itself is kind of less important than the places it's going to take me.
That's very, very wise. I like that. That's yeah, absolutely. Question number 2. Where's your next road trip? Which seems sort of, we've sort of already covered that, but what continent is next on your list?
I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
There's a dream to drive from London to Southeast Asia, straight through Central Asia.
Yeah.
That'll be the next mega trip, but I honestly don't know if I can pull it off, in the next 5 years because of coronavirus.
Right. Right.
That would be fascinating because I'm thinking, once you get across the channel, like start in London and then go down to France and then take, because I lived in Germany for 7 years, and then take that road through Bavaria straight out through Australia and then Budapest and get over that. Wow, and
then just keep going into the stands, maybe Mongolia, down through China a little bit into Nepal, drop into India, across Bangladesh, Myanmar, and then drop into Thailand or Laos or Cambodia.
Sure.
A friend of mine had a State Department assignment in Kazakhstan a couple of years ago. I think he was there for a year and a half, and he loved it. He said it was a wonderful country.
Yeah, I absolutely cannot wait. It's just, a tricky logistical one right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's a weather one. I mean, you're going to have to really think about weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Winter becomes a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, which does sort of beg the question. We may edit this next piece out, but with the arrival of a vaccine, how much of that is it just a question of waiting for everyone to get vaccinated? Is it an infrastructure question related to the availability of vaccines in other countries so that they can get their environments under control? What do you think are the biggest hurdles related to coronavirus?
To be honest, Mickey, I don't even know. I feel like, every country is dealing with it so differently. And some have just decided to lock down their borders and just say we don't want to deal with the outside world until we get our own situation under control. And when they will change their mind, nobody can know, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Question number 3. What's the most fascinating thing you've seen in someone's house or garage?
I'll give it a car bent because car podcast. In Africa, it is incredible the vehicles that you see that have obviously been written off in the first world, in Europe or America. They've been shipped over to Africa, sold on the used market. People repair the outside with duct tape and a sledgehammer, and then, they're on the road. And then 30 years later, they're completely falling apart, but they're still on the road. So a couple of times I caught taxis here and there in West Africa, and I would be sitting in a car that was less complete than most cars you see in a wrecking yard in North America. No seats, no door liners, no glass of any kind, no interior trim, no hood, no boot, stripped beyond belief, even to the point where for a gas tank, they've got a Coke bottle under the hood, with a hose coming out of it into the top of the carburetor. And they're driving these every single day. This is no problem at all. This is normal life.
Yeah.
So just incredible engineering with duct tape and a coat hanger and a sledgehammer.
Hey, that's recycling. That's amazing. I've always wondered. I passed a car graveyard the other day. That's what I call them. And I thought to myself, I wonder what cars are in there. What can I go look at? And it's good that they get a third and second life. I think that's amazing.
And a fifth and a sixth life.
Yeah.
And it's fun too, because the owners are always really passionate about them. And so once you show a little bit of interest, even if there's a language barrier, that just becomes irrelevant because they're just so excited to show you oh, look what I did here. And look at this. And the more shock you express, the more they're oh, wait till you see this. And they show you it doesn't even have brake calipers. and they're proud of that. They love it. They just gear down to slow down. They don't need brakes.
Right.
I remember one time I was in the Caribbean in a similar circumstance. The car was actually probably too old to even have a useful life in Cuba, and getting in the back of it was being operated as a taxi, and there was no floorboard. I was watching the road roll underneath my feet the whole time. And I'm like, oh my God, I am going to die in Fred Flintstone's car.
Yeah, it's incredible, but at the same time terrifying.
Terrifying.
It is very much so.
All right, my last question for you, Dan, is what are some fun and interesting alternatives to war that countries could settle their differences with?
This is a new one.
Oh, wow, that's totally out of left field.
Yeah.
I feel like countries should play checkers to see who gets to win, whatever trade deal or whatever it is. But we have to think of who should be the one playing checkers. Like, clearly not the presidents, because that'd be boring. We need like their biggest reality TV star or something versus, reality TV star of the other country.
I'm thinking maybe
Kardashians versus
Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yeah. Celebrity death match checkers to see like which country, gets this piece of land or whatever the dispute is.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Just imagine this, the drama around it. Oh, boy.
That'd be amazing. Is it the best out of so many? Or is it just one match and that's it?
I think the hype would be better if it was just one and done.
Yeah. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a ton of fun. Please stick around for the rest of the episode and let's answer the trivia question together at the end. But again, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Let's switch gears to the entire table at this point. We are missing Amanda for our In the News segment. So Dawn, can you introduce our news segment for us?
Well, in the news lately, it seems that many companies are moving toward electric vehicles. The biggest announcement this past week, GM says it aims to end sale of gasoline, diesel-powered cars, SUVs, and light trucks by 2035. And of course, you've got California talking about its goals for zero emissions and going to completely electric. You've got the new Biden administration who has an incredibly detailed, hundreds of page plan for getting us carbon neutral. And you've got GM saying, hey, we're excited about what the Biden administration wants to do, and we will be part of that plan. It says that GM sold 2.55 million vehicles in the United States last year. That's 2.555 million, but only about 20,000 were EVs, and that was the Chevy Bolt hatchback.
Right.
And it said in November it's investing $27 billion, billion with a B, in electric and autonomous vehicles over the next 5 years, up from the $20 billion planned before the coronavirus pandemic. GM stock, which climbed as much as 7.4% this past week, closed up at 3.5. So that's their commitment. They are also their CEO or their chief executive, Mary Barra, has aggressively pushed GM to embrace, and I'm reading this from a Reuters report so that everybody knows where it comes from, electric vehicles and a shift from gasoline, and even said they're working with the Environmental Defense Fund, which is a huge nonprofit that's an environmental advocacy group. Full disclosure, I worked for EDF for a while, and they really are excited to shape a shared vision of all electric future and aspirations to eliminate tailpipe emissions from the new light vehicles or new light duty vehicles by 2035. Morgan Stanley's excited about it, and everybody's kind of on board. So it's a game changer. I think this article says it. Governor Newsom out in California says it's a game changer. When you've got a major manufacturer like GM going after the electric market and doing it probably, hopefully, in an accessible price range, other than Tesla, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, this is pretty exciting.
It is. Go ahead, Mickey. I'll hold my thought for a second.
No, please, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, well, a little bit of a, not cynical, but the story between the lines take on it that I've been kind of picking up, around the ether is that China actually had a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
Because they are moving faster than any large country toward, getting EVs established as the norm, and GM sells more vehicles there than they do here.
Right. They have about 58,000 employees in China.
They sold 3 million vehicles there in 2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was going to say the same
dog.
thing.
Yeah. So really, China's wagging. They're setting the stage. And you're right, Ben. I didn't I didn't want to allude to that, but thank you for, it's the global, we live in a global
Yeah.
world.
We do.
As long as we might be isolationists now just because of the pandemic, but as soon as the world opens back up, China is poised to bring so much onto the market, and our companies based here, owned here, have to play on their scene.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing I was going to suggest is that our friend Tim, who's been on the program with us before, actually posed this question to us with the idea that major car manufacturers are switching to only electric production in the next 15 years. What does that mean for this country in terms of how energy gets distributed to those individual vehicles? Are gas pumps going to go away? Are charging stations across the country going to be more ubiquitous? Are we just going to limit this to inner city driving and everyone charges up their stuff at home? Which I think those are all pretty good questions, but
we built out, the interstate highway system. I think that governments are going to take the lead in having a system of generation. I think companies like Tesla have already taken the lead and had supercharging stations across the country. I think you're going to see a lot of innovation in so many different ways. When you think about, I think there's just an incredible opportunity here for solar power and electrically charged vehicles at your home. And, will people, road trips, I'd love to see more powered, like rapid rail from here to wherever, that you're just like, put your vehicle on the back of a train and off you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
awesome.
I think it also has quite an impact when you think of a sea change like this on, trade-in markets, and we're talking about with all, what do you do with a nationwide fleet of gas vehicles as the technology changes? It's if you think of what we go through when a new operating system comes out and everyone has to upgrade their PCs, it's a much, much bigger problem. One of the budding industries I think you're going to see come out of this is EV conversions. Like Dan, I'm also a big Wrangler fan. I've had my Wrangler since 2008. It's the car I really should have bought when I was 24 years old. And the beauty of a Jeep is you can do anything to the Jeep you want to, including getting an EV conversion for it. And I've kicked it around a couple of times. Like, do I want to convert the Jeep to electric just to keep it going in a different world? And
I think that's also battery technology is going to have to be really seriously looked at, because right now, people, when the battery isn't charging anymore, we're not talking $135 diehard. We're talking a $7,000 array of batteries. So I think that's going to have to really, the technology is just so exciting. I'm excited. I want to change the convertible to an EV eventually, because that's what's going to go next. Let me tell you what, that's what's going to go next on that car.
Well, I've given some thought about that with the Lotus as well. It's got a freshly rebuilt engine right now, but that, eventually that engine will wear out. And I figure that by the time it's due for its next rebuild, the battery technology is going to be really good. There's a guy in England right now who's got a similar car. It's another Lotus. It's a smaller model, but it's the same chassis and powertrain and all that he's converted to electric, and it's brilliant. He's used some secondhand Tesla battery packs. I forget what motor he's using, but yeah, the motors are ahead of the batteries right now. The motors are good all day long already.
Ben, if you do this, you'll have no more problem keeping the oil in the engine.
That's true.
Yes. One of the things in conversions that I think is lacking right now is powertrain, because the thing with a lot of these electric motors is, yes, they produce maximum torque from 0 on up. The problem is once they get to a certain RPM, they begin to become a whole lot less efficient and their power drops off. And so, people who've done conversions with direct drive from the motor to the wheel are running into problems where the thing has blistering acceleration and a top speed of 80 miles an hour, which isn't really usable real world. So what a lot of people who've converted have wound up doing is they've left the old transmission in place so that they can have a couple of extra gears to get around that problem. But, you know, an old school transmission with 4 or 5 or 6 gears is bigger and heavier than, and it's just more ratios than you need in this application. So I would love to see a motor that has an integral overdrive built in with it, that just has 2 or 3, you know, overdrive ratios in addition to the direct drive. You know, just for this application, so that the whole motor and overdrive and everything will fit in the former transmission space, which leaves you more room for batteries and you've got less, you know, dead weight.
You know, I have to applaud you guys for being more accepting of this upcoming change in the way things get done. You know, I'm of two minds. On the one hand, yes, I'm excited for the new technology and the newness of everything that's going to surround this. You know, the energy independence that we might be able to have and strengthen ourselves as you know, continent wise, right? So that we can be less reliant on other countries for our energy needs, stuff like that. But on the other hand, there's a part of me that wants to just gas up my gigantic Hemi engine and put my foot in it, you know? And,
And you're right, Nikki. I think we will be sad when we don't hear that beautiful engine sound. But I'm also hoping, let's not lose the facade of the vehicles. Let's keep making cars look as pretty as they can be, and not just utilitarian. You know, that's the other thing. I want to see lots of variety in vehicles. I don't want it to be a monolith of electric Teslas. I mean, a Tesla is a nice car and it's sleek, but I don't want 100 Teslas.
This is one of my fears, that when autonomous vehicles get to the point where, you know, the most cost-effective option for most people is going to have a, you know, either Google Mobility or Apple Car, you know, subscription. Right. You know, call a robot car on your phone app to take you anywhere you need to go. There'll just be these little plastic transpo pods that'll be full of advertising, and they'll be nasty because nobody will ever, you know, the owners won't clean them.
But on the other hand, will someone like Dan be able to stay at home one day and pick up his smartphone and say, I need a vehicle to take me to Kazakhstan?
Well, this brings me to another thought, because the whole while what I've been thinking is, you know, like he said, the first world's vehicles trickling down to the rest of the world. How is the electric transition going to play through that?
Yeah. You know, I think there are so many. I mean, I hate to compare it to a typewriter, but you know, they're in museums now, and I learned to type on a typewriter. So I think we're at that point in life where we're on the verge of some really serious tectonic shifts in the environment and engineering and science. I mean, I think I thought the other day, isn't it exciting to be in a new century? We're now 20 years into this new century. And I think of my grandparents who were 20 years into a new century and all the things that they were experiencing. And on the one hand, not wanting, and on the other hand, buying. And we're there. It's kind of cool.
And don't worry, Mickey, there will, you know, even if you lose the war, there will always be something that will pander to men's testosterone.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a lot like when the automobile was first invented. You know, at first, there weren't gas stations. You couldn't drive far. They weren't reliable. Right. You couldn't get the oil changed if you went somewhere remote. So there were tons of people who still owned horses who said, horse and carriage is better, and I'm going to stick with my horse and carriage. And it'll be sort of a gradual transition period. And even now, 100 years later, there are still people who love their horse and carriage, and they use it because they want to. And I think that'll be the same with gasoline cars. You know, in 100 years, there still will be cars for petrol heads who, you know, want to drive around a racetrack and hear the noise.
Sure.
You just may have it in your own backyard. I mean, you may have your own gas tank or bunches of things that you have to put in your trunk, which now I'm starting to think, oh, that's going to be really safe when you rear in somebody with 4 gallons of gasoline in their trunk.
What were you saying, Dan?
Yeah, and I just think, you know, the rollout of charging stations and whether we use solar and all of that, it'll be just like the rollout of gas stations was 100 years ago. It'll take time. It's a process, but I think it'll get there. We'll just keep chipping away at it, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 years, and then the very, very vast majority of vehicles will be electric.
And it won't be even everywhere. One solution's not going to fit every place.
That's right. That's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah, right now we don't even have a universal charging standard.
That is true. That is very
And
true.
I guarantee you those people on the Autobahn are not going to want to stop at 80 miles an hour.
Right.
Well, you know, it is simply human nature, I think, to some degree, to sort of be a little afraid of change. And
Yeah.
certainly I'm not immune to that. So, but thank you. Good stuff for an In the News segment. And if anybody in our listening audience has an item that you'd like the Thing About Cars crew to tackle for an In the News segment, or any reason, please drop us a line via our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/The Thing About Cars. I believe that's the full URL. And we would love to hear your topics. Love to hear your ideas for segments, things like that. Let's switch gears to a really quick moment of listener mail, because we are running short on time. Our friend Beth Enns says she has a question. She says, wants to know if we've ever done a show on the auto cutoff feature in new cars. It shuts off your engine if you're sitting with your foot on the brake for more than a few seconds. It's supposed to save you on emissions, but it doesn't seem like it would be good on wear and tear on the engine/starter. We've never talked about this on the show, if I remember correctly. But I've driven a truck like that. If you were in traffic, for instance, and you were just idling for maybe more than 15 seconds at a time, the whole engine would just shut off. And the minute you put your foot back on the gas, the whole thing started up again, and you moved 10 yards, and then the same thing happened again. Lather, rinse, repeat kind of cycle of cutting off and starting up the engine again. But it does raise a good question. It's supposed to help on energy and gas consumption and emissions production, but is it harder on the engine? What do you guys think?
I'm inclined to think it's not terrible. I've driven a bunch of these things, all the different rental cars that I drive. And to take a little bit of a cynical take on the emissions thing, I think it helps more on the actual test than in the real world. That said, in really urban areas, places like European cities especially, I think it counts a little bit more, where if you're not going anywhere, why make pollution? Right. But they work pretty well. I think the wear and tear isn't as big an issue as it would have been a couple of decades ago, just because of the advancement in the engineering inside the engines. You know, the tolerances are so much tighter. The materials are so much better than they used to be. The lubricants are better. I mean, we're building cars now that are taking, 0 W15 or 0, 20 oil that are going, 250,000 miles without a rebuild. Whereas in the old days with 2050, the thing still needed to be overhauled at 80,000. Everything is so much better that I don't think it's that big an issue, really.
Well, I think the concern is also in a city like Atlanta in particular, where you have traffic, and does having the auto shut-off engine really help you in a situation like that, where you're not doing the rural thing and you're not just tooling around town, you're actually stuck in traffic for an hour at a time, if not more.
Yeah, well, you're still creeping along during that hour. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I really literally did not move for a whole hour, except when I was stuck in a snowstorm in Pennsylvania once. But the systems are pretty smart. They're well regulated. They will turn the engine back on when the brain of the car senses a need to, whether the battery charge is going too low because you're running the air conditioner, the headlights, and the radio all at the same time. Whether there's too little vacuum in the brake booster, things like that. It will turn on if it needs to. And I've seen some where even if you press the brake a little harder, it'll turn back on. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to tell Beth on the matter?
Yeah, I know with regards to the starter motors, they are simply uprated. So I spoke to an engineer at one of the big OEMs, and he said, yeah, we just designed those starters to do like 10 times the starting cycles of what they previously were. He's like, it's fine. Those starters will easily outlast the vehicle.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Cool.
Okay. Well, there you go, Beth. I hope that answers your question. I think it's time to end the show or bring it all to a close with our grand trivia auto question. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Who
Yes.
invented the modern 3-point seatbelt in the late 1950s and made the patent open and free to all car manufacturers? Was that company Mercedes? Was it Ford, Volvo, or Tata? Dawn, what do you think?
I know it's Volvo. I'm
You know
sorry.
it's Volvo?
We remember we went through this in the decades, the 1950s. So I know it's Volvo.
Yeah. Dan?
I'm going to stick with Volvo as well. Their safety record is just immense.
Right. Dave?
But I didn't know, but Volvo would have been my guess because of the safety focus.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. Not only because safety, but yeah, the 50s was a time when Volvo was really flourishing, and I think it's the only company out of the list that would actually make something public domain. That just seems like more of a Scandinavian ethic than German or American.
That's true.
Well, you're all correct.
We better be.
Volvo in fact proudly states that few people have saved as many lives as Niels Bohlin, and they are correct.
Yes.
Niels Bohlin is the little-known Volvo engineer who invented the V-type three-point safety belt in 1959 and saw his innovation through to universal adoption across the motor industry. So well done, everybody. You got the Grand Trivia Auto question correct. Dan, this has been a real pleasure to have you with us today. On the odd chance that your travels ever bring you through Georgia or Atlanta, Georgia, we would very much love to sit down and have a cup of coffee or something with you. And I hope that becomes a reality at some point. But wherever you go, we wish you well. Please keep us posted on how your travels transpire.
Thank you guys so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Yep. And
We've loved it.
yeah, and to our listener, please, if you don't mind, rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find the thing about cars. Your ratings make us more visible to more listeners, and we really appreciate it when you do that. In the meantime, we hope you're all staying warm and safe out there, and we will see you with another episode in about a week. Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.